Welcome back. You're here with Goldberg. Today we'll be talking about Soc 101. Is it a good major? Should you pursue it? Now, sociology has a reputation of being a worthless degree. Oh, it's too easy. The football players will take it. Although I did know a couple of folks in college who were doing it as pre-med, because I guess now the MCAT has some sociology questions. That's my understanding. Or that was then. It could have been axed by now. The tricky part is that since sociology is a relatively general degree, you are going to have folks that end up as cops or firefighters, work in different professions. So establishing a clear line of this is what you do with a sociology degree is somewhat complicated. Nevertheless, we have some primary categories to go by, and that's what we'll talk about in this video. Sociology is not the most valuable course of study out there, but if you're able to do it and you have a scholarship or, it's low tuition, there are routes to getting a job. I would say sociology courses, and that wasn't my major, but they were some of the most fascinating, more so than political science, psychology, economics, just my personal opinion. So let us commence. We can begin with sociologists, and this for the most part is going to be academic, possibly a think tank. In any case, you see not a terribly attractive growth rate, 4%, and they have only 100 jobs projected. At the same time, and granted this is slightly outdated, 2014, but they're talking about how the number of sociology jobs in the academic sector has ticked up a little bit. You have about 500. That doesn't seem like much, but then you have to remember how many PhDs are graduating in a particular field every year. It's not nearly as bad as, let's say, law schools where they're just cranking them out. PhD takes time. You have to make a dissertation. There's only so many schools. So that's playing in your favor, but obviously understand a PhD. I've done videos on that. It's a lot of work for a long period of time. And even once you get it, there's tons more research and reading to do. So it's not for the faint of heart. Another common angle is social workers. Now be aware you might have to get an MSW, Master of Social Work, although some of these jobs, especially if you're working in like the public benefits agencies, you can just have the bachelor's and you'll be fine. I've known a lot of people who will try to intern as doing social work while they're pursuing a sociology degree. So there's a path forward, and here you see much better, 13% growth, 90,000 jobs. Society isn't exactly getting much better, at least in the short term, so these are going to be roles which have demand. Now, you may not want to work in those fields. We'll talk about in just a little bit, but positions are available. And I thought I would incorporate market research analysts because I've known some folks in sociology who will do that. Sociology, if you're just talking about basic theoretical courses, limited applicability, but because you're studying trends and dynamics within society, if you pair that with data analytics with data science, it can be very effective for business research, in particular business intelligence. And that's where many people are going. If that's your intent, and even if you're going into more of the PhD direction, I would advise, whether you can take classes at your university or just on your own time, Coursera, look at all this stuff we got, Google data analytics, data analysis. Some of these are actual certificates. So that's another thing you can tack on your resume. And they're low cost, maybe $200, depending on how quickly you complete all the required material. And here we have data science. So just because you're studying the subject, don't have this attitude of shying away from some of these tools, because increasingly they're being used regardless of the field that you're in. But you can effectively take that knowledge and channel it in such a manner that could make you very useful in a particular job field. And as we saw, I don't think I noted right there, 18% growth rate. So it's not too bad. Definitely going to have opportunities in that department. So as far as possible careers, we already kind of touched on this, the academic side of things. As we know, there's a limited number of openings, but there's also only so many people who are getting the PhDs. My advice would be only do that if you're very much committed to it. So as an undergrad, you apply to do some research in the department. And if you're going to do sociology, suggestion is to find a school where they have a complete department of sociology, because sometimes it's just mixed in with others and it's not the same level of structure. But sign up to do some independent study and get a sense of whether this is an endeavor you want to take on, because like I said, PhD is not, oh, I'm just doing a degree. It's more of a lifestyle. And you're going to have to constantly be reading, publishing, getting your name out there, building that CV in order to get eventually, hopefully, a tenured position or a think tank role. Noted earlier, positions in benefits departments, doing social work. Now, these can be stable positions, but you might notice if you look at local governments, they have a relatively high turnover rate. Why? Because it's a lot of paperwork to deal with, and there are people who get angry if you deny them benefits. So those are things to weigh. That being said, relatively secure position, and it's not going away anytime soon. I don't see welfare reform happening in the near future. So that's one option. Once you get kind of entrenched, you're pretty much good to go. And then, of course, those positions we mentioned earlier, market research, business intelligence, that's also going to be very substantial. I think I brought it before. The gentleman I knew who they were essentially taking data off of receipts at a consumer store, organizing it, and then sending it back, or really selling it back to these companies so that those firms can decide, okay, do we have to start our sales earlier? How do you mess with that? How do you maximize your ability to make returns? And as far as internet shopping goes, that whole horizon is going to be substantial in the future. So sociology, you've got options. I'm not going to suggest that it's the absolute most intense and sought after a degree to pursue, but you see that there are routes that you can go down, and there's a lot of other jobs. If the requirement is to simply have a bachelor's degree, like I said, working in public services, working in business, working in sales, there's a lot of different approaches that one could take. It's just going to come down to, is it worth getting the degree itself? Don't get yourself into a ton of debt. Be sensible, because at the end of the day, it's relatively general in nature.